Thanks for your patience while we were figuring out some technology here. So this is our first and only virtual presentation of the session. So we've got the things kinked out here. So joining us online is Hannah Thompson. She's with the North Carolina Forest Service. And just a quick little bio about Hannah. Hannah is a collector of people and stories. She has been actively involved in wildfire risk reduction with more than 22 years of experience in community service with state government forestry agencies. She has a passion for empowering people to be place-based problem solvers because the best solutions are locally driven and maintained. Hannah holds many titles in the wildfire realm, including a wildfire mitigation specialist in North Carolina with the Forest Service, as well as the Firewise USA liaison. So with that, we'll turn it over to you, Hannah. And you've got a room here. Hopefully you can see the camera here, and we can take questions at the end as we have time. So.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, where you are. It's afternoon here where I am in North Carolina, just a few minutes over afternoon. And I'm going to give you some storytelling knowledge today. I am from the mountains of Southeast Kentucky, so that's the Appalachian Mountains. And stories are a part of conversation for us. I've been hearing and sharing stories since I was a little girl. And in my professional life, I have from time to time not used my oral storytelling skill set. I've kind of regressed to using statistics and all of those types of pieces of information to try to sell a program or tell a story. And I've realized in the last few years that those methods of communication are not effective. So last year for the National Cohesive Strategy workshop in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I was asked to deliver a similar presentation, and I did so. So some of this will kind of reflect exactly what was in that presentation, but also some new things that I've integrated into here. So I am a daughter of a coal miner who's disabled due to his health and the activities that he endured in the coal mine. And I'm also the daughter of, she was a homemaker when I was in elementary school, but when I entered college, my mom did too. I'm really proud of her. She works for the University of Kentucky as a early childhood development specialist. So she coordinates training for early childhood providers, but also she is the manager of a bakery that's a community enterprise in Southeast Kentucky in my old elementary school, which was closed. And so now it's a community center. It's called the Hemp Hill Community Center, and it's also a bakery, which is that social enterprise, and she employs high school students and formerly incarcerated individuals and tries to harness the skill set of any able being who is willing to learn something new, and she employs them there at the bakery. So that is kind of my heritage from my direct lineage there, but I grew up with these stories of hearing my mom tell stories about our family and spooky stories. She would go to the elementary school and tell our family stories that had been passed down for generations about what happened around cemeteries and all these spooky kind of things. But she was called upon to tell those stories to elementary school children around Halloween every year. So she's been pretty impactful in my life, and you'll get to see a picture of her a little bit later. So in this session today, that's just a little introduction about me. I hope that we'll be able to explore our individual interpretation, communication, and influence when telling a story which could impact change, because a lot of times stories can do that. I hope that we can create a plan to craft a story which can be scaled up within an organization. And I'll show you an example of how that's happened for me with a story that I had a hand in creating. And then we've been able to scale it up to another area in our state. I hope we can identify problems, solutions, and future challenges with telling a scalable story, and we'll have some time for discussion in groups as well. And then identify a partner who can help publish your story, because partners are everything, right? We can't do the work ourselves. And then determine roles and responsibilities for contributors. So you'll have a moment to brainstorm what that looks like for your organization. Now, you heard that I'm a wildfire mitigation specialist, and I am. I cover a 50-county area in North Carolina. So I cover the Outer Banks and the Crystal Coast, and then into our Piedmont region of North Carolina. So that's half of our state. We have 100 counties total, but I have the eastern 50. And we use the cohesive strategy Venn diagram here, which talks about fire adapted communities, resilient landscapes, and safe and effective risk-based wildfire response. I am a responder as well. I've been a county ranger, I've been the statewide outreach coordinator, and now I'm in my role of community wildfire mitigation, just because it's a marriage between those two things. It's outreach plus what I know and what I learned through being a responder, that I can do the job that I do now. So I realized in my career, as I spoke of a little bit ago, that as I do my daily job, I talk about statistics a lot. You know, I don't know if you guys know this or you ladies know this, but North Carolina ranks #1 in the nation for acres or area in the wildland urban interface. Now, in the report that's in, it's generated in hectares, so we always have to change that to acres for our users, because that's what people know more frequently. But I say that statistic a lot, but it hasn't ever really bought me anything. It's a surprise factor when you say it to a group, but it doesn't really like spur engagement or cause somebody to want to do something about their area surrounding their home. So I would say in my professional career of 22, almost 23 years, I've kind of gone back from what I learned as a child to what I thought was appropriate professionally. And I didn't really marry the two. But in the last few years, I've really come to appreciate storytelling as a means to enact change around a current issue that affects a lot of people around the country. So I'd like to ask you in the room and online, are you more about conventional narrative, or do you embrace storytelling? How many conventional narrative people do we have in the room? If you can raise your hand, I can see some of you. And if you're online, you can also raise your hand. Okay, do we have storytellers in the room? Oh, I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for that participation. I really appreciate it. So I was doing some research for the presentation I shared at the Cohesive Strategy Workshop, and I found this article from the Harvard Business Review.
All right, sorry, everybody. Hannah, I apologize. I just accidentally muted you.
Mute her up there.
Oh. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah, it popped up on my screen for some reason. I don't know how I got muted.
that was my bad. So I was trying to mute the audience, so.
No, that's okay. So, when I was researching for the presentation I did in New Mexico, I was looking for just some documentation to support my presentation. And I found an article called Storytelling That Moves People. It was in the Harvard Business Review. And in there, she talks about Robert McKee, who is the screenwriting lecturer. So he's trying to tell stories on a bigger scale than what the average person would. But still, he said, when talking about conventional rhetoric or intellectual process, he said, and you build your case by giving statistics and facts and quotes from authorities, but there are two problems with rhetoric. First, the people you're talking to have their own set of authorities, statistics, and experiences. While you're trying to persuade them, they're arguing with you in their head. So if you do succeed in persuading them, you've done so only on an intellectual basis. That's not good enough because people are not inspired to act by reason alone. So I've been making a mistake all these years in my professional career. Let me get over here. Since I clicked, it's not wanting me to advance. I got it now. Sorry about that. The other way, from the same article, the other way to persuade people, and ultimately a much more powerful way, is by uniting an idea with an emotion. The best way to do that is by telling a compelling story. In a story, you not only weave a lot of information into the telling, but you also arouse your listeners' emotions and energy. So it takes rationality, but little creativity to design an argument using conventional rhetoric, but it demands vivid insight and storytelling skill to present an idea that packs enough emotional power to be memorable. And I know that's true just by seeing the lack of change that has happened throughout a career's worth of telling people the statistics and nothing really changing. The best way that I knew how was to try to inject some storytelling. So I would love for you all to brainstorm and discuss what makes a good story. And then we'll talk about it and be ready to share. So find a partner and pair up and talk about it. And the individuals on the online version, if you'll just brainstorm yourself, and then maybe we'll call on some of you.
Yeah. I was thinking I'm gonna be asking for data. I'll make a case of like how I again, I didn't know if that's not very yeah.
I think. Oh, I'm not in that situation. I don't know. I
Okay, we'll take about 30 more seconds to discuss what makes a good story, and then we'll report out.
Yeah. Especially like setting, I feel like it's Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so who would like to share with the group what makes a good story?
All right, we'll bring it back together here.
Stories to share forward now. So if you have one here, maybe come up towards the owl and then you can put it in the owl.
Is anybody willing to share what makes a good story? Amanda online, she said relatable scenarios, situations, features a character or characters with qualities people can connect with or care about. So. Anybody else want to add to that?
Gracie said something similar, building emotional investment, getting them invested in the story so they want to continue and hear more.
And then paying that off.
Nice. Yeah, Kelsey.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Understanding.
I couldn't hear that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, if you want to come up closer, yeah.
Yeah, maybe like, you know, we all are passionate about what we do and like this stuff, but maybe not everybody else's, about having like empathy for what their experiences. So we were talking specifically like logging practices. I remember going to university and a lot of people were very just anti-logging. And I grew up in a logging community, so I agree that they're not perfect practices, but you have to understand that these are people, these are those livelihoods. And if you want to have those discussions with them, you have to like be able to empathize with where they're coming from. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Did we have another one online?
Yeah, Brian says a story that is so engaging, it feels like 1 minute has gone by and actually 10 minutes have gone by. And I will add, Emmy brought up about humor, that humor goes a long way in storytelling.
Well, thank you for that feedback, everyone. I couldn't hear the last one. What did Emmy say?
About humor and making people laugh.
Oh, yes. Sorry, it's a little bit muted, but I got it. So thank you everyone for participating in that. I really appreciate the sharing. So oral storytelling, which is part of my culture in Appalachia, and it's not Appalachia. I'm going to throw an apple at you if you can think about it that way. That'll remind you. For the people who actually live and dwell there, it's Appalachia. And we have a culture that came over from when we came over here from being in Scotland, Ireland, England, all those places where people gravitated to here throughout history. And it came with us, and some of us, or at least my ancestors, settled deep in the mountains of Appalachia in the central part in southeast Kentucky, and a lot of them have never even left home. They stay there. But oral storytelling, it's entertainment, it's everything. Like it's the lifeblood, it's the way we talk, it's in the similes that we say when we're trying to illustrate how cold something is or how hot something is. I'm sure you all have those cultural similes that y'all say in your areas as well, but it connects people to their culture. It begins rapid human connection. My mom can tell a story and spin it so well, and she'll have the audience just hanging on every word that she says. I've seen her do it so many times. It promotes critical thinking development. I was on a future problem solving team in elementary school, and we told some stories in that room when we were locked up with our little problem that we had to solve. And I remember that being the first time that I solved, or what I thought that I solved as an elementary school student, a big problem. And I think maybe that's what brought me to the work that I'm doing today. I'm not sure, but I think it had some influence there. It also helps build community. And this is a picture of my mom. Her name is Gwen Johnson. She's been featured on a lot of articles. If you search her name and the Hemp Hill Community Center or Black Sheep Bakery, she'll pop up. They featured her on TikTok. On different organizations have taken clips of things that she said and actually made them into TikTok. So she's on there as well. If you look up her name, you'll find it. I want to let you see a perspective on a story. So I heard from the grapevine in one of the counties that I cover, called Harnett County, that the county rangers said that some fuel mitigation work that we had completed prior, there was a fire in the area and the fire burned straight into the fuels treatments. So then the fire couldn't progress towards the community. And when I heard about it, I was like, well, we have to tell the story. There's no way around it. So I compiled a list of questions and enlisted the help of some media people in my agency. And two of us went out to see Buren in the field. We showed up at the park where he burns. It's a county park, and you'll hear a little bit more about it as he tells his story. I was standing directly to the right of the camera as he's speaking, so you'll see him speaking directly to me, although the camera is capturing that conversation. And I just led him through a series of prompts for things that I wanted him to talk about. And this is the result of what he said. Oh no. Hold on. Let me get back here. Can you hear it?
My name is Buren Fulmer. I'm the Harnett County
Yeah.
Ranger with the North Carolina Forest Service. Welcome to Anderson Creek Park. This park is owned by Harnett County. It's 1,100 acres. We have about 650 acres in longleaf. The rest of the park is in a mix of longleaf, loblolly, and hardwood. There's been several fires. In 1982, wasn't a park then, the entire park area burnt in a very large wildfire in 82. We've had several fires, footprints inside of this property over the years. The last fairly large fire was about 45 acres. I think that was in 2007. The reason we're burning here is with all the growth and development that has occurred in the last 20 years, especially in western Harnett County, we've got several large subdivisions that have popped up on the perimeter that back up to the park area. With that, you have more people, you have more opportunities for an accidental fire to occur. To the south, we have a very large subdivision, very high density subdivision, 500 plus houses that border up to the park. On the north side of the park, we have some areas that were developed in like 5-acre lots, the house very wooded, and they all bump up to it. So what we were real concerned with, if a fire in the middle of 1,000 acres gets to going and builds up a big head of steam and runs into those subdivisions, we need to be proactive and we need to try to reduce that fuel load to prevent a catastrophic fire from occurring. When this park originated, it was several years before the county developed the park, and we knew that this area has had a long history of wildfire. So we worked with the park because of all the longleaf. We wanted to make sure that we were managing the longleaf properly, which requires fire. And that also helps reduce the risk of wildfire. So I think it was in 2008, 2009 when we started the burning program here. What we normally try to do is burn anywhere between 50 to 100 acres a year inside the park, and then try to get that 3-year burning regime in the longleaf and keep it on that type of rotation. For the last, I think we're on our 8th year that we have received funding through the CWPP program to do controlled burning. Here, it's worked out real well for the county. Of course, with burning, there's an expense to get all the equipment, to get the fire lines in, to conduct the burn, and that has helped offset the cost and from the county and to make sure that we reduce the fuel load out here. In 2021, in April, we had a wildfire out here at the park, and it was right off the backside of this unit that we're sitting in right now. This unit had been burnt in February of 2021. And so we knew that the fire, with the way the wind was blowing, was coming right to this unit that had been burnt. So basically, when we went in with our dozer, we took care of the north side of it and just let it continue to burn to the south, because we knew that it was eventually going to run into this unit that we had just burned. And we knew that there was nowhere, it was not going to advance to the south without running into the units that we'd either burnt that year in 2021, or some of the units that we had burned in 2020 and 2019. We knew that, that it was going to run out of steam. It was either going to stop because it hit a unit that had been burnt that year, or it was going to burn into a unit with reduced fuel load that would be easy for us to wrap it up, put a line around. I share it with county every year, about the grants that we've received out here. The county Parks and Rec department that manages the property, they understand the longleaf pine ecosystem and how it works with fire, and they really want to maintain that ecosystem. There's several plants that the Parks and Rec know that is out here, and they want to maintain that ecological longleaf restoration program. It makes you feel good that you've got stuff in place. So, this place has always concerned me because it's a park. You've got a trail system. You've got people out here. You've got people out here on red flag days that are just walking trails. You have kids. You have lots of opportunity for that fire to start, and start on a day doesn't have the best conditions. It makes you feel good that you know that it's in an area that's already been treated and is not going to get totally out of control. We do it on private property as well as this one right here in this county. One, to protect their timber investment. Two, to help manage their forest for not only timber production, wildlife benefit from the burning and stuff like that. It's a beautiful place. It's just amazing to see how that repeated burning, like the stand that we're sitting in, it's really opened up, and there's a Bachman sparrow. They've got recordings of it out here, and so they want to make sure that that habitat remains out here.
So we'll take just a few minutes and let you think about the video and what you think about it. And you may already have some thoughts. So whenever you're ready, you can share them with us.
Anybody feeling brave?
It was great to see pictures of what he was talking about and see people walking the trails and get a sense for what fuel loads look like there, like what it means to have done some prescribed burns. So having the story and the photos made it like a very relatable experience.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do you have any critique for the story? I'd love to hear that as well.
I don't have a critique. I have a question though. I'm curious
Okay.
what questions you ask to get those stories, because sometimes that coaching can be challenging.
Well, I kind of knew what he had explained to me that happened. So I just, some of the questions were, what were the events that happened the day of the fire? And we trimmed what you saw there in that video was trimmed back quite a bit because, when people are just talking, sometimes they have some, I don't want to say weird mannerisms, but, like stammering and that kind of thing. Even I do it presenting. So you had to have some things to trim out. So I asked him, like, what were the events that transpired the day of the burn? I asked what work happened before the burn. I asked how he felt about the work that he has done out there. I asked how the county feels about the work that they do, if there were any wildlife species or any plants that he could highlight. I asked about the longleaf ecosystem. I'm trying to think about all of the questions. And I just took some notes the day of, right before this presentation. It wasn't anything that I scripted out or wanted him to speak a certain way. I just wanted him to be himself. And he was. And then we filmed that in front of some trees, and we had some concerns about him not wearing his personal protective equipment. But he was like in a parking lot in front of those trees, like to begin with. But when he was in the woods, you could see he had on his hard hat and all that stuff. But yeah, I think you have to tease the story from the person you're filming if you really want it. And you have to ask them how they felt in the moment. You have to feel free to like explore that, because those will be some of the nuggets in the video that really sell it as a good story. Any other questions?
I have a follow-up to that. And I was curious, I noticed when you were listing out the questions, you went from like very personal in the moment questions to further like questions about what happened the day before to what's the ecosystem and everything in between. Was that how you ordered it in the interview?
I think we started with the technical stuff first, and then we went to the emotional stuff because he felt comfortable talking about the technical stuff, right? He does that every day for his job. Some of our folks, I mean, fire people can be a little bit bristly sometimes. Buren is not that way. He's pretty open. So I knew he would answer my questions no matter what it was, but he did stumble a little bit more on like the emotional questions, I think a little, but not much. He's pretty professional and he held his own up there in front of the camera. And like I said, it was over 7 minutes what we filmed, and then what you saw, I think that's like a three or so minute video. Did I answer your question fully?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just had one, this was more like a critique of the video aspect, but I would have loved to see, isn't so much a storytelling thing, but I would have loved to have seen like some more aerial imagery or like of the actual burn scar. I don't know, I feel like that would have highlighted it, and it would have been interesting to see that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've heard that in the past. They'd like to see that map stay in the frame a little bit longer so that when Buren's talking about it, then it's still there. And this was done on one afternoon, and then we did some edits that took a couple days, and then it was produced. The reason this video was filmed to begin with is I was doing a presentation about wildfire risk in North Carolina, and it was part of a larger event called Flame Week in Turnbull Creek. It's an educational state forest. And it was a virtual week of activities, and we were looking for a personal way to introduce each topic, and Buren's story was caught on camera as an intro to the presentation that I did. There was also presentations on like fire weather and fire behavior, and then law enforcement, and there was one other topic I can't remember at this moment, but that was the way that it was. So it was just a 3 to 4 minute video. Well, thank you for that participation. I really appreciate it. So here to add a little bit of flavor to that. So this is from our Southern Wildfire Risk Assessment Portal, this image here, and the pink delineation, the darker pink, hot pink, if you will, is the community protection zone. So that means that's immediately affected by fuels, like immediately adjacent to the lighter pink color that's overlaid on the green. So it kind of just looks like a pale, you can almost tell it's pink, but it's like a pale gray pink. It is that a fire could travel to a community within 2 miles if it's that color. And we have to remember that these data sets are based on land fire data, but this particular one was based on 2012 data. So 2012. So it's quite a bit old. And we did the video and presentation last year for Buren, so 2023. So even then it was already 11 years old. So And then this is just a little bit more information about those zones, so you can, it's I explained it already. It's the rate of spread data is used to determine the areas of concern around populated areas that are within a 2-hour fire spread distance. And that's that secondary CPZ or community protection zone. I'll give you just a moment to look at that. That's really the nugget that we need to take away from here. And then I want to show you how we scaled it. So 140 miles away from Anderson Creek Park is the Croatan National Forest. And right after the presentation that I gave last spring, I think it was in February, in April of that same year, there was a fire ignition that happened in the Croatan National Forest. So it's like 3.25 hours drive time from one place to the other. But on April 19th of 2023 was the origin of the fire. And then the last report on NCWeb, which is the place where you can get all the information about the fire. So it's like incident and web together. So NCWeb, it's a website where fire information is held. You may be familiar with it. The last update from public information officers was the 30th of May in 2023. Some pretty volatile fuels and impassable fuel types with organic soils that burn feet in the ground during drought conditions, and we were experiencing some of that. I am also on the Community Mitigation Assistance Team as a member. I'm also the manager of that team currently as secondary employment, but we were dispatched to this fire to help. It's also 30 minutes from my house. So some members of our team from all around the country came in to help and assist with an assignment here to pull people together for collaboration. And so they were here from the 8th of May to the 18th of May. So it was a 10-day assignment, and it was pretty escalated timeline to get a lot of cooperators together to plan and execute some activities together. So this will give you that same context for what the Croatan looks like. You can see the National Forest right there in the middle, and what those community protection zones look like as far as the Croatan goes. It is it's densely populated around the southern edge and the eastern and northern parts, but around the western side, it's a little less so, just because that's a very rural county. Well, the two counties that come together right there are a little bit more rural, and not a lot of development has happened there yet, but you can still see it's almost like a connected string of bright pink that almost goes completely 360 around the fire, or where the fire was, sorry, around the forest. And so to scale it, this video was used to highlight what can happen if proactive measures are taken in the Croatan National Forest's CMAT plan, which was called One More Day. And there is a QR code here if you want to see that report, but it'll also be available in the slides later, so you can check it out when you have more time. But it is a really good document. It's a story map format, so it has a lot of imagery and map layers and all the things. But Buren's video is highlighted there to represent that when you do proactive work, you can reduce risk and help protect communities when you do. So the cohesive strategy, I don't know how many of you all are familiar with it, but originally the concepts that the cohesive strategy documented as needed were challenged by vegetation and fuels, communities and values at risk, human-caused ignitions, and effective and efficient wildfire response. But just last year, they also added climate change, workforce capacity, health and well-being, community resilience, and then diversity, equity, inclusion, and environmental justice. So all those things are now also wrapped into the cohesive strategy, and you can see those key implementation challenges there. There's still a need for the significant increase in the use of proactive fire across the country, and Buren's video is documenting that. Proactive fire did keep a fire from spreading across 1,000 acres to reach the community to the south. The winds were blowing that way and towards the road the day that Buren burned, or the day that the fire burned, that Buren's prescribed fire efforts stopped it. So can storytelling help with this national cohesive strategy? What do you guys think? Or ladies? Anybody have any comments? Do you think storytelling could help this big challenging thing? The Venn diagram goes right along with this at the beginning of the presentation.
Hannah, can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Okay. I would say yes, because I think it's super important, especially trying to connect such a wide scale of people and states even all across. Hearing personally from your own story is what's going to tell that more effectively, and share like your own personal experiences, but how they kind of connect as well, where the themes are, and maybe get different perspectives.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think it can help as well. I think we could do a lot better job of telling stories about all these different facets of the cohesive strategy, and including the things that we're all struggling with as challenges. The cohesive strategy challenges that are listed here are just a piece of what all organizations go through, but in the fire world, yes. But in your individual organizations, what are some of your challenges? And do you think storytelling could help you there? It's just something for you to ponder. Because we're going to move into an individual activity for you to craft a scalable story. And I'd like for you to just jot down a few notes, and the things that you need to include are to define your purpose, outline your journey, be authentic and vulnerable, highlight strategies and actions, show the impact, use vivid descriptions and engaging language, incorporate lessons learned, and edit and refine. And if you do all these things, you should have a good story. So if you want to take a few minutes to take a few notes, and then maybe one person can share the plan for their story.
So Hannah, we're scheduled to end at 9:50. We have about a 10-minute break before our next talk, so.
Okay, so we're right up against our time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, does anybody plan to tell a story just before we close? I don't want to keep you from your break.
Any breaks?
It doesn't look like we have any brave souls in the audience, but we did get some folks taking some photos of it and hopefully using it as a resource for maybe their next project.
Okay. I'm just gonna go to the end and leave my contact information. If anybody needs to get a hold of me, my email is probably the best way. So I think we got a little bit of a late start, so we didn't get to